continued to launch its sabotage campaign. International pressure. Nelson Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment, and he spent the next 27 years of his life in prison, a lot of it on Robben Island. My uncle, so this is quite close, personal to me, my uncle was a friend of Mandela, and he was also a member of the African National Congress. And he was arrested and tortured, and then exiled, from South Africa. And he spent most of his life in Zambia, Russia, and then settled in England. I myself had a happy and carefree childhood, despite the deep-seated racial inequalities and the political tensions that enveloped me. There was always a paranoia and a fear and a distrust among the races that permeated into everyday life. I went to a local school. I love school. The best childhood memories I have was from my school days. My parents were not well off, but they worked hard and sacrificed much for me and my siblings. My mum always said that she wished us to have the education that she never had. And she always used to say that education was the passport, to a better life, to success, and she was right. I was lucky. Most children in South Africa never had access to sanitation, to clean water, to healthcare. Most children went to bed hungry and cold. So education was the last, the least of their priorities. In 1976, there was these huge uprisings in Soweto, and lots of the protests were led by high school students. 20,000 students took to the street to rally against the apartheid government, and this was because Afrikaans was forced into schools as a medium of instruction. And the resultant conflict, it resulted in 600 students being killed with clashes with the security forces. So by the time I entered university, I became more politically conscious. University was a big cultural shock for me. It was the first time that I'd shared a learning space with black and white people. I always felt inadequate at university. I always felt, inferior, because all my life, apartheid, said I was a second-class citizen. But I attended political rallies and protests on campus. We boycotted lectures. We demanded the release of Mandela and others. And this was often met with tear gas and rubber bullets and police batons. And this only fueled our determination and resolve. So the more people rallied against the apartheid government, the harder it hit back with violence and brutality. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to feel so emotional about this. So in 1989, the unrest escalated. The state of emergency was declared, and the following year, Mandela was released from prison. And it was as if the country, the whole country was jubilant, and it was almost as if South Africa had won the rugby, the cricket, and the soccer World Cup all at once. It was a lovely time to be there. After graduating from medical school in 1994, the ANC won its first non-racial democratic elections. And it was the first time I was allowed in my life to vote. My parents by then were in their late 50s, and it was the first time in their lives they were allowed to vote. So Mandela became the first black president, and he focused, and his department focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid through tackling institutionalized racism and fostering racial reconciliation in what turned out to be a very open and truthful and peaceful way. And the 27th of April is now declared a public holiday, Freedom Day. The South African Constitution is widely regarded as the most progressive constitution in the world. And it guarantees women's rights to and autonomy over their own bodies. However, domestic abuse and violence against women, remain disgraceful blots on a reputation of a country that is called a miracle nation, the Rainbow Nation. The rate of sexual violence in South Africa is amongst the highest in the world, with the women being raped every 26 seconds. So I believe that true freedom in South Africa can only be achieved when women have been emancipated from these forms of oppression. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rajanee. It's a very moving story talking about people suffering and struggling during apartheid South Africa's period. And next speaker is